Haywood, there's a lot of information, like I keep saying, that we're going to cover. But first, I want to get to the 20 years later, the O.J. Simpson trial. How did you end up being on that trial?
Well, once again, the voice of God spoke to me. And he told me I needed to be in that trial. But the other part of it is that I've always advocated for the black press to have equal opportunity and access to cover any news event, but especially those that involve people of color, especially black Americans. So when that trial came up, I advocated for the black press to get in there, and I advocated for there to be a photo position for the black press, which had never been in America. And it's interesting, there was a meeting talking about who was going to be in there shooting. And I went to the meeting. It was downtown at the Associated Press building. And the 5 big names in the business that operate the pool in L.A., photo pool in L.A., each day of the week, one of the big 5, as I call them, operates the pool when something major is taking place. They're the ones that shoot it that day. So we had this meeting. They was talking, and they gave me all the reasons why the black press couldn't be part of it.
Wait. What do you mean why they could not be part of it?
Well, it has always been made up of mainstream media organizations, and mainstream media, that a lot of people don't understand, is white-owned news organizations. That's what mainstream media is. That's sort of a code word for news organizations that are owned by white Americans that actually their programs are designed to go to what you call the masses in this country and the prominent people, which is white Americans who've always been the majority in this country. Mainstream media.
Okay.
And white Americans are considered to be the mainstream and the majority of people in this country. So that's where and how they put their newscasts together for that population mainly.
So that's why when you said you had to advocate to be there, that's why?
That's why I had to advocate, because they did not have any black news organizations in any of the photo pools. And as a matter of fact, 20 years later, even though I broke the barrier, 20 years later, when you look across the board, when anything happens, they do not look and call the black press to be a part of it. They still do what they do the way they've done for 20 years, except when I find out and I go and have a little conversation. In 2014, okay. And I have a little conversation with them.
Okay, so then you ended up being on the trial.
I ended up being on the trial, and one of the most interesting things about it, they said that we did not have the skills, and what was so interesting about that one is that I had been working for several of these organizations. I had been a photographer, a stringer photographer, and I shot for them. And I would always ask them, was the images good? And they said, the images is good, they paid me, they liked my work. But when it came time to sit beside them as an equal, all of a sudden they said the work wasn't good enough. And what's so interesting about it, had to go to court, and the judge had to decide to let us have a position to be in the courtroom.
Wow.
And so Judge Ito said, hey, if they don't want to work with y'all, then I will give y'all a position of your own.
Okay.
And so went in the courtroom, and the very first day I walked into the courtroom, they didn't like the fact that I was there, and so we shot. And it was the same day that O.J. pled not guilty.
Okay.
He did his plea of not guilty. It was also the first day that Johnny Cochran came in to be one of O.J.'s attorneys. So it was a historic day in a couple of ways. So I shot the hearing. I left to go home. Of course, they didn't really have too much to say to me, so I didn't have too much to say to them. I just wanted to get home and take a look at my film.
Okay.
I remember like it was yesterday. I was pulling on to the 110 coming across I think it's the 3rd Street on-ramp to the 110 headed southbound. Back then, we mostly had pagers. My pager goes off, I look at it, and it's the number.
Pagers, wow.
Yeah, it was a number. It was the number from the Associated Press. I'm like, this is really not important enough for me to pull over and make a phone call.
Yeah.
So I'll wait till I get home. So I got home and I called them. They said, Haywood. I'm like, yes. All the newspapers, the different newspapers was watching the hearing, and they saw O.J. Simpson smile. Our photographers didn't get it. We want to know if by chance you caught the smile. I don't know. I said, I'll let you know in a few minutes when I processed the film.
And
so
that's when you had to process. That wasn't even digital
yes,
cameras
that
then.
was processing
Oh, my
film. I had to
goodness.
process the film. And I'm holding the film up and I'm looking at it and I see these frames. And so I look at it under the loop. And I had a machine that you could put it on television that would show the positive of it.
Right.
And OJ was smiling at Johnny. And I just stood
Do
there.
we have that one?
I'm not sure I sent that one.
You know what? Let's
And so I just stood there kind of smiling. And I picked up the phone and I called back to Associated Press. Yes, I believe I did capture that image. I have that image. Can we use it? Yes, you can use the image.
Yeah.
Will you bring it to us? No, I will not bring the image to you. You've got to send somebody to pick it up. Okay.
Did they normally send someone to pick it up?
No,
or
you go back to them. And
Oh,
so I'm like,
okay.
if you want it, you'll send somebody pick it up.
Okay.
Okay. So they sent somebody to pick it up. And here's the thing about it. They said we didn't have what it took to be in the courtroom beside them to
You are
capture the
kidding.
images. We didn't have the skill, and they was concerned we would not produce the type of images that they needed of the important, significant moments. And here it is. My very first day in the courtroom, I captured the image that everybody wanted and their photographers didn't capture.
Oh, wow. Wow. Again, today's show is speaking to Haywood Galbraith. And Haywood, I always just call you Haywood. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Well, I'm sitting over here, I'm smiling as you say it, because I had to go to class when I was in the 3rd grade to learn how to say it. It's Galbraith.
Galbraith. Because it is
Galbraith.
spelled breath.
Yeah, Galbraith.
Galbraith.
They took me out of class and put me in a special class to learn how to say my last name.
Well, again, my very special guest, Haywood Galbraith, and I want to just first talk about that. This is not a show to talk about whether guilty or not guilty. This is a show, and it's not to open up old wounds. We do feel for the families, both families that lost a loved one in the that brought about this trial. Even O.J. Simpson's family that dealt with whatever they dealt with through the trial. I wanted to highlight Haywood because he has a story from another side that no one heard. And he has not only stories, but he has unseen photos. And we always hear one side, but Haywood was in the courtroom, every single day?
Every single day from the preliminary hearings until the guilty verdict was read.
Every single day. And so with that, I wanted Haywood to share his story because not only does he have an absolutely wonderful story, he also used to be he used to act. And I just love how when he's telling this story, he's so animated, And so, again, Haywood, I want to thank you. And for those of you that probably just tuned in, he was the only African-American photojournalist on the trial of the century, the O.J. Simpson trial. So we do have a few photos, and if my engineer is ready, I think we have them numbered. Haywood, let's look at photo number 1. And this is actually the photo that's also on the back of the book.
Yes.
Tell us about how this ended up being on the back of the book, which is to tell you. Now, for those of you that are seeing this, for our callers, for those of you that call in, your name will be My Little Lucky Bowl, and this is a collector's item. Haywood has signed the book, and he will, this book is going to be given to one of our callers that's pulled today, so that you have this collector's item with this world-class photographer who is on the back cover. How did you end up here?
It's interesting. There's 2 parts to this story.
Okay.
The first part is the photo itself.
Okay.
If you will notice, Johnny is leaning over to speak to O.J. O.J. is turned to say something to Johnny. Robert Shapiro is leaning in. Originally, you see this little brown thing over in the corner beside Robert Shapiro. That's a podium.
Yes.
Johnny was standing at the podium talking to the judge. And the judge asked a question, and Johnny didn't have the answer to it. And Johnny said, "Excuse me a minute, Your Honor. I need to speak to my client." So Johnny walks over and leans over. O.J. turns into Johnny. Now, Robert Shapiro was sitting up straight. When O.J. leaned to Johnny to say something, Robert Shapiro leaned in. This is how advertising stays on our mind. As soon as Robert Shapiro leaned in, I whispered out loud, E.F. Hutton.
Ah,
When E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. Everybody, the commercial was, everybody was always leaning in to hear what E.F. Hutton was saying. So when Robert Shapiro leaned in, I whispered out loud, E.F. Hutton, and fired the picture at the same time. The other photographers was just sitting around doing nothing, and I just kind of chuckled, E.F. Hutton. And I said to myself, that became my E.F. Hutton shot. Now, I knew that O.J. was going to write a book before anybody in the media knew. I had a working relationship with Johnnie Cochran. I had been his photographer for years doing stuff. And so Johnny called me to his house. Johnny, in the hallway one day, said, Haywood, I need you to get a bunch of pictures together that you've taken of the trial so far. I need you to come to my office. I need to talk to you. So I gathered up the pictures. I went to Johnny's office. I gave him the pictures to look at, and he's like, And then he looks at me. He says, okay, now I'm going to tell you what's happening. He says, O.J. is writing a book, and nobody knows. Now, the journalist in me goes, I got me a scoop and a half. And so Johnny says, I want you to take these pictures to a place in the valley where the guy is working on the book because I want your picture used as a cover photo for the book.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then Johnny looks at me again as he's handing me back the picture. And you don't know anything about it, do you? I'm like, no, Johnny, I don't know anything about it. So I go and I take the photos to the valley. I go to the guy's house. And this guy was a little arrogant guy. He talked down to me, and I showed him all these pictures, and midway through our conversation, I realized that he said, I'm looking for a certain thing, and these aren't it. And I realized in the conversation that I actually had the picture because the title of the book is I Want to Tell You.
I Want to Tell You, yes.
And so I had that picture of O.J. leaning over to tell Johnny something, and I knew that was the perfect picture, but I knew because of this guy's attitude that if I said that I got the perfect picture, he would go like, nah, that's not it, I need something else. So I did Psychology 101 on him. He said, you got anything else? I said, well, I got one more picture, but I really don't think that's what you want. I'm not even going to pull it out because I don't think it's what you want, man. And he said, let me see the picture. I'm like, here it is, but like I told you, I don't think that's what you want. And the guy looks at the picture and goes, that's it. That's what I want. I'm like, I'm not sure you really want that, man.
Okay.
And the guy's like, yeah, that's what I want. Give me that picture. So he gave me back the picture. He said, I need the negative. I said, okay. So I take it, and I take the pictures, and I go back to my car, and I get in the car, and I sit there, and I bust out laughing because I just used psychology on the guy. I knew I had the perfect picture, but I knew because of his attitude, he wasn't going to go for it. So I psyched him into using it, and every time I think about him, I see him, I laugh at it. But like I said, that picture is my E.F. Hutton shot.
Your E.F.
That's
Hutton
the first
shot.
thing I think about when I see a picture, mainly because of what Robert Shapiro did. The way Robert leaned into the picture just as Johnny started talking.
Right.
And like I said, I mumbled, E.F. Hutton.
The next photo is Johnnie Cochran by himself. Now, he was so well known for his ties during the trial.
Yes.
I mean, so much so that if someone following after that had on a very nice tie, they started calling them Johnnie Cochran ties.
Yes.
How did he get to be known from that? What did a lot of that have to do with your photos?
No, Johnny was a very nice dresser.
Yes.
Very nice dresser. And I think 20 years ago, neckties were certain neckties, and the necktie thing was in that the necktie set off the suit, and so Johnny got into wearing different neckties. I think some of the neckties he wore, people even sent him to wear so that it would be on.
Yes.
In that particular shot, we was at a break. Johnny was waiting for something over at the clerk's desk, and he was just standing there, and he was looking at me, but he wasn't looking at me, and I knew he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me. And so I captured that shot. As a matter of fact, that's one of my most favorite shots of Johnny.
It is an excellent shot.
And when he did his book, there was a lot of people who actually wanted that shot to be on the cover of the book. But they chose to do this Hollywood type thing with the shot and do special effects in the shot.
Yeah.
And I love that shot.
That is an excellent, excellent shot. The next one.
The most famous house guest in America.
Yes.
Kato Kaelin.
Kato Kaelin.
interesting young man. You know, he wanted to be in Hollywood along with a lot of people. This was his opportunity for 15 minutes of fame. He carried it into 15 and a half minutes of fame, but that's about as far as it went. You know, some people still have some opinions about him, but, you know, he was living his dream, the Hollywood dream. He hooked into a good situation.
Yeah.
And you could tell even on the witness stand, he was doing a little acting, hoping that some talent agent or somebody would discover him on the witness stand.
You know, Haywood, give me the feeling of being in the courtroom. Where were you when you, because, you know, you have where everyone is sitting, and then you have where the lawyers are with OJ, and then on the other table. Where were you? I
was in the back of the courtroom.
Really?
The three photographers was in the back of the courtroom. Where you see Cato sitting is the front of the courtroom, and the witness stand up beside the judge.
So you're just zooming in?
Just zooming in. I was in the back of the courtroom. That was the position for the three still photographers and the television camera guy.
Then
because
how
he
did
was
you not
operating.
just get the back of the heads of, like on this picture? How did you have it from the front?
That was during the preliminary hearings, and in the preliminary hearings, it was only the lawyers, the prosecution, O.J. Simpson. So we was at the front of the courtroom in the witness, not the witness box, but in the jury box, shooting back toward what was going on with the lawyers and stuff.
Okay.
And shortly, right after when the trial started, they moved us because we couldn't be in there with the jury. They moved us to the back of the room to shoot toward the front.
All right. So then
which was a better angle.
The next photo, number 4, you can tell that she's very emotional at this time, and understandably so. Nicole's sister,
Denise Brown.
Yeah, Denise Brown. I'm sorry. Talk to me about this photo. What made you shoot this particular?
Is there a smirk on my face?
Why?
There's a smirk on my face. I know there's a smirk on my face.
Why?
Because she was doing acting 101 too. It's not, you know, it's not that she wasn't emotional about the death of her sister.
Okay.
But there was a lot of acting going on from a whole lot of people. The witnesses that testified was coached by the prosecution and the defense. They coached their witnesses to do certain things.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Oh, okay.
Denise was coached to do certain things. As a matter of fact, you'll see in the book, I have an image of Chris Darden walking past Denise, and she has a smirk on her face, and she's going to pick up a glass of water. Now, what that was about was, it was Friday afternoon, and on Friday afternoon, one of the things that happened in the trial with the defense and the prosecution, on Friday afternoons, they would try to leave the jury and America with something dramatic to think about all weekend long. Okay?
You mean just like a television show or something? Well, yeah,
Then with a
cliffhanger.
all weekend long to think about. So it's Friday afternoon, and I done been there for so long. I knew the routine. And so it's getting close. It's like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna do something here, and I know they're going to do something. But what are they going to do? And so I started looking around, anticipating. I said, the only thing that they can do is for Denise to start crying, and for Denise to start crying, and the judge say, I think we've done enough for the day. We have to stop. And for her to say, no, Your Honor, I think I can go on. So I said, I know that's the scenario. I know it's going to happen. When's it going to happen? It's got to start happening soon because we're getting close to time for the court to come to an end.
Now think about it. If we would have been in the era now, you would have texted at that time, she's going to start crying in about
I would have
probably or something like that.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden, Chris Darden calls for a sidebar. And I said, this is it. And a sidebar is when the lawyers go up to speak to the judge to the side of the bench. They call it a sidebar.
Right.
He comes off the bench. He goes to the side of the bench. They stand up there and they talk about it and they hash out the problem. And then they come back. I said, when Chris Darden called for the sidebar, I said, this is it. Somewhere in this, it's getting ready to happen.
Well, now tell me this, because a lot of times when you're on trial or when you're getting ready to speak, whatever, you can get emotional.
You get emotional.
And it could be because sometimes even when I'm involved in something and I think I'm not going to cry, the moment I get ready to say something, it's right there. That could have been one of those moments.
It could have been, but it wasn't because I was paying attention to her. I was paying attention to what was going on.
Okay.
She
Okay.
was straight-faced, and they went to that sidebar. I said, this is it. Somewhere in here, something's going to
Well,
happen.
we're gonna come back. We're gonna
Chris went back.
sidebar.
Yeah.
Don't cry, but
Yeah.
we're gonna go on a break.
Okay.
Right here. We'll be right back at you. This is Sharita with Drive Time with me and my friend Haywood. Back at you.
So many ways I can please. Hey, hey, hey.
That was our sponsor, Pitbull. If you haven't tried Pitbull, you know what? I used to did not drink energy drinks. And I was sitting here, and I've had a few of the different flavors from the lime to, I think there's even grapefruit or something. And there's no aftertaste. I mean, they're just so good. So if you're an energy drink person, or even if you're not, you might want to try Pitbull. Now, you guys do not wait till after the show to call me. I always get emails or someone following. If you tell me what you thought, where were you during the OJ trial? How were you feeling when the OJ trial was going on? If you would like to talk to Haywood, or you have a question or just want to tell us where were you at that time, give us a call at 323-965-1600. That's 323-965-1600. We do have a caller. Let's see, Haywood, let's put your earpiece on, your earphones in. All right. Hi, this is Sharita J.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
What city are you calling from?
I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri.
Well, hello, Kansas City, Missouri. Your first name?
LaDanya.
Well, hello, LaDanya. What is your question, comment?
I just wanted to know, did the Associated Press pay him for that picture? Because they would have had to pay me.
Haywood?
No, Associated Press didn't pay me for that particular photo because the deal was that when you're part of a pool photo, that everybody gets to share the photos. And one of the things I was doing was establishing that the Black Press of America was just as good as them.
And you were present.
And one of the ways to establish it, there was an ulterior motive for me giving it to them because I knew they were going to use it all over the world. And what I told them was they had to use my name on it in the Black Press. So.
Okay.
And that was another thing I was going to ask. Did you get credit for it? Big credit, not just a little bitty, your name in big lights. It should have been if it wasn't.
It wasn't in lights, but when I told them that it was mandatory because there's a certain thing that happens with the usage of pictures and stuff that they can leave your name off of it if they choose to. When I told them that the photo credit was mandatory, it's like, ugh. But they had to do it. So
yeah.
And so, like I said, I wanted to. The name I was using had to do with the Black Press of America. So I wanted them to know and the world to know that we were there. Like I said, there was an ulterior motive for why I did what I did, and it worked out.
Okay. You know what? I've got to say, this is my cousin from Kansas City, Missouri. LaDanya, thank you so much for calling in. LaDanya, where were you during the OJ trial?
At the beauty shop making trouble.
Oh, okay.
Being the devil's advocate, I would get things started. I would say one thing. That's what I do. I do that well.
Okay.
I would say one thing and make everybody else argue about it.
Well, what we're going to do, LaDanya, is what we're doing today is we're putting your name in the bowl, And any other callers, if we don't get any other callers, you get this book that is signed by the world famous photographer, photojournalist, Mr. Haywood Galbraith. And so if no others call in, then you will get the book.
And I'll pick that up when I see you in a few.
Yes, you're coming out here in November because you guys go to my Facebook at Sharita Herring Making a Difference. We're having a red carpet gala for the 20-year anniversary of my company and my 55th birthday party. That's November 7th, and I'll see you there. So, LaDanya, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All righty. So, Haywood,
Yes.
let's go to the next photo. Okay, photo number 5. Tell us about this one.
Mark Furman. Mark Furman, who perjured himself. Well, he didn't actually perjure himself. He took a plea deal to plead the fifth, I believe, and just walk away. I think he also retired from the police department. But he was perjuring himself on the witness stand, and like I said, his lawyer advised him to not say anything else. Just say, I'm going to take the fifth, and he walked on up out of there. He was the one that went to O.J.'s house the night of the murders and said he found the blood on the car and stuff that gave him probable cause to get the warrant. But the most interesting thing about that was in sitting there and watching the evidence that was collected and the bloodstains and stuff, a couple of those bloodstains that he saw that caused him great concern and the police great concern to be able to get the warrant was they were in a spot on the vehicle that you couldn't see unless the door was open, and they said they didn't go into the vehicle.
Hold on one second. We have a caller. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Sharita. This is April Ford.
Hi, April. You are San Diego now.
San Juan Capistrano in Orange.
San Juan Capistrano. April, you're calling in with a question or comment.
Yes, I had one question for Haywood since the upcoming, I don't like to use the word anniversary. It's not a very joyous, fun event since it's 20-year mark.
Right.
Is there anything that he's going to be working on?
Oh, yes. After 20 years, I am finally going to do my photo book documentary, a DVD, and working on a traveling photo exhibit to tell my story about the trial of the century from the perspective that you've never seen it before or heard it before. For 20 years, you've heard mainstream media talk about it.
Right.
You haven't heard it from the perspective of one of only 2 journalists in the world and the only photojournalist in the world to sit in that courtroom every day and document that trial from beginning to the end. I think I have like 19,000 images.
Wow.
So
It's like
I
a
am
story
going
behind a story.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to tell my story, and I've been promoting it on Facebook and on my website, is setting the record straight, and as well as the untold story about the trial of the century, the one that they did not want you to know. And there's a lot of truth behind the fact that they did not want my story to come out.
Okay. Well, April, you know what? I know who you are, so we're going to put your name in the bowl, and we're going to pull at the end of the show. April, thank you. And April is very special to me, too. She and I are colleagues with a forum called CEO Space, which is the just premier business forum, and with bringing people together from more than 140 countries. She's also part of our C360 program. And so, April, I hope that we'll see you at the conference on November 6th, and then we're highlighting our affiliates at the gala on November 7th.
I will be there. So
Outstanding. April, thank you for calling in.
All right, Sharita.
Okay.
Sharita, I want to highlight something here.
Yes. Can I have a thing for April?
As you said earlier,
yes,
we're sitting here talking today about this very historic event. As a matter of fact, it was the biggest criminal court case in the history of the United States of America. We're not sitting in here advocating for O.J.'s guilt,
right,
or not guilty.
Right.
Here's what I say about my story about the trial of the century. I am going to tell the people my story. I'm going to tell the people what I saw for almost 325 days. Like I said, I was there from the beginning of the preliminary hearings to the not guilty verdict every day from beginning to the end. I saw stuff that nobody else saw. I am going to tell the story of what took place in that courtroom. Only what I saw. I'm going to tell it the way an ethical journalist is supposed to tell it.
Ethical, non-biased.
Non-biased journalist is supposed to tell it. I'm going to show what I captured. If what I'm saying is an opinion as opposed to fact, I'm going to say, hey, this is my opinion about what's going on and what happened here. The other thing is that I believe that once I'm finished telling the story, that the American people will see the O.J. Simpson trial entirely different.
Differently, okay.
You will understand that the media, of which I am part of, whose job is to gather and to disseminate information to the American people as truthfully and non-biased as we can, that the media skewed bias what you saw and heard about that trial. And I am willing to debate anybody that was there about what took place. And like I said to the young lady, my story is the story they never wanted you to know about. And everybody that's in the business of media knows who I am and what I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, wait. Before we go any further, what's staying in my mind is the dog. Do you have a picture of the dog?
I don't have a picture. The only picture of the dog I have is a picture they put up about the dog.
Ah, and so you have a picture of the dog.
I have a picture of the picture of the dog.
You know, because still, I mean, even when I hear a dog barking just continuously, I think of the dog from the O.J. trial. If that dog could talk, he gonna tell something, because he was doing some barking.
He probably would. He probably ran away because they was probably trying to get him too, but that's a different story.
He really did run away?
Yeah, I think they found him outside the gate.
Oh yeah. He was getting away.
He's like,
wow.
If I'm not a witness, maybe I can survive.
Okay. Now, we have a caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Your first name and your city?
Wayne in Carson, California.
Wayne in Carson, California. Now, Wayne, after we're done, don't hang up, because we're going to get your phone number so that we can make sure that we have you in the drawing, and if we need to call you to get your address and all of that, okay?
That's fine.
All right, Wayne, thanks for calling in, and your question.
Well, I've been waiting for this book. He's been telling me it's coming out. I've been knowing him for a while.
You must know Wayne. He's going to call you out on the air.
No, that's my buddy there. I'm excited. I'm really I'm a fan of his. He knows that.
Yes.
And he's a good guy. And trust me, if he's going to tell you what he wants to tell you, it's going to be unbiased truth, because you know, in the media, when you come out like this to say something about that type of trial, he's going to ruffle a lot of feathers.
Yeah.
And he's kept a lot of stuff to himself. He never told me. He never told everything to a lot of us. Because he was concerned about repercussion. There were a lot of things, from what I've told, allegations made to anybody regarding that trial from the media, and I'm glad it's coming out now, because it needs to be said. It needs to be exposed, right or wrong, up or down. It needs to come out.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Well, you know, Wayne, thank you for that, because I'd imagine it was very hard to not talk about the trial. And Haywood, to my understanding, this was a trial that was also very heated with between black and white. It also guided people's different opinions, but you also were experiencing racism while you were working the trial.
First of all,
Can you talk about that?
To tell my family member, thanks for calling. Thanks for calling me out. I'll see you at a family get-together.
Okay.
Calling me out, okay? You call me out, a family member. That's how your family do you.
Just air you.
On national radio at that. National radio. Okay, all right. I love you still.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but I really am proud of him, because what you were saying about the racism, he really went through some changes behind that trial.
Ah, okay.
And he wants to be nice about it, but I'm not that nice.
Thank you.
Well, Wayne, don't hang up, okay? Because we want to get your info so we can put you in on the drawing.
Okay.
On October the 3rd, when I walked out of that trial, I was a changed individual.
Uh-huh.
It took me 18 years. I didn't hate, per se, from the standpoint of hate the people, the person. I hated the way of the people and the persons. Speaking of my white brothers, they treated me so bad. It took me 18. It wasn't until last year, actually, I started interacting with white photographers again, because most of the white photographers, photojournalists out here, at one time or another, were in that courtroom, and they all treated me like, as I always say, like I was a black man in America. They treated me so bad.
Wow.
They said things. They did things. They blocked opportunities. They looked down their nose at me and the black press of America. And it's not so much looking down their nose at me. I don't really have an issue with that.
It was the
looking down their nose at
the undertone of racism.
Yeah, looking down their nose at black Americans and the black press of America. I had them tell me or ask me, why you think you should be here?
You were actually also out of all about how many photographers are we talking about, first of all?
We're talking about
photojournalists.
We're talking about there were 23 photo news organizations. There were only 3 photographers each day in the courtroom.
In the courtroom.
There were 3 different photo pools. One photo pool had 5 in it. The other I think had 16 or 17. And then there was the black press pool, and I was the one responsible for the black press pool. So there were 3 different photographers every day working for different news organizations.
Now, out of all of those photographers, weren't you the only one to go to Bundy and Rockingham?
Yes, that's another one of those.
How did that happen?
That's another one of those things that they always said that we got into the courtroom, and that was the black press of America, by favoritism. And that they always said that, well, Johnny had something to do with you getting into the courtroom. Well, no, it wasn't Johnny. It was the judge who was presiding over the case.
Let's go to that next photo.
Which is Judge Ito. Who once he heard that y'all said y'all didn't think the black press should be there or the black press didn't have the skill, he said, okay, then I'll give them a position to be in here to cover this trial. It was Judge Ito, not Johnny Cochran, not some other black person out there who did something. It was the judge who was presiding over the trial who made that decision.
Wow.
So there came a time when they were going to take the jury to Bundy and Rockingham to view the crime scenes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know at the time, and so I come into the courtroom one morning, and a couple of white photographers come in there, because it was usually white photographers and me. Mm-hmm. And so they came in, and this particular morning, one of them walked in and he looked at me and he had this smirk on his face, and I'm like, what are you smirking about? He said, well, you know what? The court has decided to go to Bundy and Rockingham. And the court also decided that they're only going to take one photographer. Not the 3 different photo pools, but just one photographer gets to go. And he said, you know, there's like 22 of us and only one of you. Now, what do you think the chances are of you getting picked to go? And then he turned around and he pointed toward Judge Ito. You see Judge Ito? Your little friend Judge Ito? Uh-huh. He can't help you because it's the court over him that said only one was going. And then he pointed to Johnny. She said, you see Johnny Cochran, your buddy Johnny Cochran up there? I said, yeah. He said, Johnny Cochran can't help you either. So now what do you think is going to happen? So I'm like, okay, whatever. So for some reason, the court went dark. And when the court goes dark, that means there's no court that day. Okay. And so I was at home, and I think it was a Friday. It was a Friday. I was at home. Mm-hmm. I was working on pictures and stuff, images.
Right.
And I got this phone call from the head of the photo pool who worked for Time Magazine. It was a lady who worked for Time Magazine. She was in charge of the magazine pool and the other pool, and she called and she said, Haywood. I said, yes. She said, this is so-and-so and so-and-so. And she did not like me. She did not want me to be in the courtroom. She did not like us being there. And she said, this is so-and-so. And I said, hi, how you doing? And she said, I'm doing okay. She said, I'm calling you because we're getting ready to put the names into a hat and pull a name out.
Literally put them into a hat. Like
Put
we
them
have
into
it
a
here.
hat.
Okay.
And pull the name out of who's going. Now, my first reaction was, and so I wanted you to be on the phone when we did this so that you could see there was no hanky-panky. And my first reaction was, something, please. I'm sitting down here at 64th and Western. You're up in Westwood across the street from the Federal Building. How do I know you even going to put my name in the hat? So I'm like, okay, so if that's what you're going to do,
Yeah.
if that's what you're going to do, go ahead. So
Yeah.
she said, yeah, I want you to be on the phone and listen. So she said, my secretary is putting the names in the hat. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a bunch of bull.
Yeah.
She said, my secretary is pulling the name out of the hat. And then there was a long pause. And I'm like, okay. Then she said, the name is Haywood Galbraith, HG Star 1. And
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. And her voice went, Haywood? I'm like, yes. Your name was pulled. I'm like, oh, wow. That's amazing. Thank you.
That's really how it happened.
That's how it happened. I'm appreciative. So I hang up the phone. I do a couple of backflips, point toward the ceiling. Yes, God.
What'd you say? That was God.
And then, yes, God, we still got this one. So the Monday morning, after that, we go back to court. We go in the courtroom, and these photographers walk in. The other two photographers walk in, and one of them walks up to me, and he says, how did you pull that one off? I pointed toward the ceiling. I said, you got to talk to God about that one. You got to talk to God about that.
Wow.
And then I found out.
Wow.
I found out later on that when the other news organizations found out that my name had been pulled, they requested to have another meeting and another pulling of the name because they said they didn't feel like I could do the job adequately. And the head of the court said, no, we're not going to do that like that. And so I went to Bundy and Rockingham. I was the only official photographer to go there.
Yes.
And what they had told the head of the court,
And we're not showing any of those photos today.
and what they had told the court was that they didn't feel I could do it. They felt that because we couldn't get on the property, we had been denied the ability to get on the property, and would have to shoot from the street. They felt that even with their photographers, as good as their photographers were, that their photographers would only get 2 or 3 pictures that would be able to be transmitted. So the court said, no, he's going. That's it. His name was fair and square. He's going.
Yes.
So we went. I shot.
Yes.
They picked up the film. They took it back to the Associated Press. They processed it. Later on that evening when we came back, I went over to the Associated Press to pick up my film. I walked in. The editor was sitting at the desk. He turned and smiled at me and was like, Haywood, you did it, man. I'm like, what? He said, we only thought it was going to be 3 or 4 pictures. So far, we've transmitted 18 pictures of yours, and we got 2 or 3 more to transmit.
Which is rare for them to pull that many.
Yes,
is it?
it was phenomenal because they thought there was only going to be 3 or 4 pictures because of the position we had. There wouldn't be anything to see.
Because you couldn't get too close.
You couldn't get too
because of
close.
evidence.
But because of the way I shot and what I shot, what my eye captured and what I saw, they transmitted 18 pictures. And I was standing there, and the head of the bureau called. And he said, oh, yeah, he's standing right here talking to me. And she said, she wanted to speak to me, and he handed me the phone, and she said, Haywood, you did a phenomenal job.
Wow.
We thought with our own photographers, as good as they shoot, there was only going to be 3 or 4 pictures to transmit. But so far, they've
Outstanding.
transmitted 18 pictures of yours across the world.
Outstanding.
And they tell me they got a couple more to shoot.
Okay.
So I said, she said, you did a good job. I said, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And so we went on, and then I got in the car and did a couple more black flips, and like, you're right, God, we did it
What you say,
again.
the man.
We
Yeah.
did it again.
Okay, our call-in number is 323-965-1600, 323-965-1600. I'm speaking with my very special guest, my friend, Haywood Galbraith, and he was the only African-American photojournalist journalist on the trial of the century. That's the O.J. Simpson trial. Haywood, we're going to have to do this again.
Yes.
I've got to bring you back next week for us to finish this because we still have a lot more photos to go through.
Yes.
And we've got to talk about your nonprofit and what the amazing things you're doing with our kids. But right now, I want to go to this next photo and tell me this story because you were at the back of the courtroom now.
I was at the back of the courtroom.
How did you capture this lady?
You know, Mama Simpson, that's O.J. Simpson's mother.
Yes.
And I started calling her Mama Simpson. And she began to know who I was and started warming up to me. And for some reason, she turned to look at me, and I took the picture. But I have another picture that is so funny. Sitting beside
And we
her.
can show it next week?
Yeah.
Do we have that one today?
If I can find it.
Okay.
Sitting beside her is her daughter, Carmelita.
Okay.
And the story was, Mama Simpson had her hand on her ear. And she turned around and she looked at me and she was laughing. And I shot the picture. And so we went to a break and I wanted to know why she was laughing with her hand on her ear. Mm-hmm. So we go out into the hallway, and she was in a wheelchair, and we go out into the hallway and I lean down in front of her and I say, Mama Simpson, I need to know why you're laughing because it was part of the caption for the picture.
Right.
And her daughter, Carmelita, said, she can't hear you. And I turned to Carmelita and Carmelita said, she can't hear you. She turned her earpiece down. And I'm like, what?
Oh.
I'm like, what? And here's the funny part of it. She said, she got tired of listening to Chris Darden talk. And so she turned her earpiece down, and as she started turning it down, she was looking at me, and she saw me pointing toward her, and she started laughing as she was turning it down.
Okay.
She's like, I don't want to hear it. And I busted out laughing. So in this picture of her laughing with her hand on her ear, and she knows I'm taking her picture, that's what she's laughing at.
She was turning back up her ear.
No, she was turning it down.
She was turning it down.
We was in the middle of the courtroom, and she was turning it down, and she was laughing. And her daughter said she said she didn't want to hear Chris Darden talk anymore, and so she turned it down. She started laughing.
Okay. All right. Well, then we've got another one now. This you can also see the expressions on their face. They're not pleased, and again they're hurting. The Goldmans. Tell me about this story.
This was during the preliminary hearings. We were at the front of the courtroom. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of anger in that man's eyes and in his heart.
And I understand
in his
that.
heart, and it's very understandable.
Right.
You know, no parent, because I'm very close to a family whose son was murdered 2 years ago, and we're still dealing with it. There's a lot of pain, and it has aged his mother so much.
Sure.
No parent should ever lose a child to violence.
Yes.
No parent wants to lose their child to a medical condition. But you can deal with that better than losing your child to senseless violence.
Sure.
So this man and his family was very angry about what had taken place, and the idea that this monster, I think he called him a couple of times, O.J. Simpson, was being treated so nice. And everybody,
I would have felt the same way, I think, had I been in their position.
And everybody thought that he was a hero. And still thought he was a hero, and he was getting so much attention from the people. Mm-hmm. But it'll be in the book. Mr. Goldman was led down a road that was not the right road to be led down, and Mr. Goldman was used.
Really?
Mr. Goldman was used by the prosecution and the media for certain things, unknowingly to himself for certain things.
Okay.
And there was a whole lot of that taking place in the trial. There's a whole lot of that takes place in America. Being a journalist for 30 years, I have seen it.
Not caring that he's emotional about losing a son.
Yes. It was for the benefit of prosecuting their case, bringing attention to it, and to try to get a certain thing to come out of it that benefited the prosecution and what they were trying to do, and in the court of public opinion.
Yes.
People might not believe it, but a lot of things that took place in that trial, a lot of things that take place in other trial and major events, is to get the court of public opinion on your side, because it will persuade as quiet as it's kept. Even a jury that's put into some question, it will persuade them to court of public opinion when their family members and others come to visit them on the weekends and talk to them.
Well, Mr. Haywood Galbraith, we've got so much to cover. We're going to have you back as my special guest next week. We've got to start bringing the show to a close. I want to first, if anyone wants to follow you on Facebook, where can they go?
You can go to the Haywood Galbraith Story. That's where I'm doing most of the time. Well, if you go to the Haywood Galbraith Story, you will find my page. I now have a special page about what I'm doing with the O.J. Simpson trial. I think it's the O.J. Simpson double murder trial through the lens of the trial of the century through the lens of a black press photographer.
Okay.
Not press photographer, but black press photojournalist.
Okay. And in closing, before we do our drawing, is there anything else you would like to say?
The only thing I would like to say is that this trial, along racial lines, tore America apart 20 years ago. There has been certain entities that has benefited financially from the tearing of America apart along those racial lines.
Wow.
By the time I'm finished with my story, you will come to know that was a just verdict. And you'll come to know a lot of things that were done that continue to be done to tear this nation apart racially.
Okay, so for those that feel like that O.J. was guilty, you're saying that you will be able to show something different so that others will know?
I'll be able to show something different, that if you use what God gave you, that we call common sense.
Our common sense, okay.
You will see, as Dr. Lee said. Dr. Lee said it best when he was doing About the Blood. Something ain't right here. Something ain't right here. And basically what he was saying was this whole trial shouldn't be.
Okay.
What y'all telling me is, what y'all tried to show me is, it's not right. Something has been done wrong. There's a lot of wrong taking place. We shouldn't even be here because something is not right here.
Well, that being said, what we're going to do, Mr. Haywood, we're going to have you to reach into the bowl and pull a name out for this book that is signed by the world-renowned Mr. Photojournalist Haywood Galbraith, who took this award-winning photo that's on the back. And drum rolls, let's see.
Drum rolls and glasses. Don't be laughing. Wayne Swindell.
Wayne Swindell.
Carson, California. Man, you know what?
Wayne?
I know everybody's going to be saying, the fix was in.
So, Wayne, you get our book. And so for you guys, tune in next week. We've got a lot more from Mr. Haywood Galbraith. We're going to be talking about his nonprofit. And this is Sharita with Drive Time with Sharita J. We will see you next week. Join us. Tell others, join us. We want to hear where you were with the O.J. Simpson trial, the trial of the century. Have a fantastic week. See you in the next show.
Can I tell them about singing about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in 100-degree weather?
We're going to save that for next week.
Yeah, for next week. Be sure to tune in for that one.
Yeah, you guys come back with us, right?
All right. You want to do it again? Huh? Yeah, let's do it. We gotta take you high.
Power Lunch with Sharita J. If we could get more people to collaborate with our nonprofits, we could be bringing a lot more programs back to our schools, because there's grants where there's been a music program or an arts program or fine language program cut. There's grants where individuals could bring those programs into the schools and collaborate. So that's why I never shut up about this. C360. That stands for Collaborative 360, and that's where we've launched a program where we are identifying the grant funders and writing the grants for our